Part 1. In the summer of 1959, an entire family vanished in plain sight. They were seen eating dinner, waving to their neighbors, and even hanging laundry to dry in the sun. Hours later, their house stood silent. The food sat cold on the table, the laundry flapped untouched in the wind, and yet the family, every last one of them, was gone. According to official records, no struggle was found, no forced entry, and no clear trace of where they had gone. Local police described it as a disappearance without explanation, like watching people step out of their lives and simply not return. But what happened next defies logic. Strange letters, contradictory witness accounts, and the peculiar behavior of the neighbors turned this from a missing persons case into one of the most disturbing mysteries in American history. This is the story of the Johnson family, and the night they disappeared before everyone's eyes. Part 2. The Johnsons lived in a modest, two-story white house on Maple Street in a quiet Midwestern town. By all accounts, they were unremarkable: a father, a mother, 2 children, and a dog. Their lives mirrored those of countless post-war families: school events, Sunday church, neighbors waving across trimmed lawns. Archival records show Mr. Harold Johnson worked as an accountant at a local firm. His wife Margaret kept house and occasionally volunteered at the library. Their children, Susan, age 12, and Michael, age 9, attended the local school, where teachers remembered them as polite but quiet. According to official reports, nothing about the Johnsons suggested instability or conflict. Their bills were paid, their medical records showed nothing unusual. The neighbors remembered them as friendly, if a little reserved. But beneath the surface of that carefully constructed suburban life, there were cracks, small details that only became significant after their disappearance. One neighbor recalled that in the weeks leading up to June 1959, the Johnsons began receiving frequent late-night visitors, men in dark suits who never stayed long. Another claimed the family's curtains were drawn at unusual hours, blocking the house from view. And then, one ordinary evening, the entire family ceased to exist. Part 3. The Last Sightings. The last confirmed sighting of the Johnsons occurred on June 12, 1959. Multiple neighbors recalled seeing them around 6 p.m., enjoying dinner on their porch. The children laughed. The parents waved politely. There was nothing unusual. At approximately 7:15 p.m., a neighbor walking his dog reported hearing raised voices from the Johnsons' house, though he later admitted he could not make out the words. By 8 p.m., another neighbor swore he saw Mr. Johnson standing at the window, staring into the street. And then, silence. By morning, the Johnson home was strangely still. Newspapers were left untouched at the door. The family car sat in the driveway. The dog barked relentlessly in the backyard, unfed. When police finally entered, they found the dinner table exactly as it had been left. Plates still set, food half-eaten, drinks unfinished. Upstairs, the children's beds were unmade. Clothes lay scattered as though the family had left in the middle of a routine evening. According to official police logs, no fingerprints other than the family's were found, no valuables were missing, and no signs of forced entry could be identified. But as investigators began to dig deeper, they realized this was no ordinary disappearance. Part 4. The Neighbors. To understand what happened that night, one must look closely at the neighbors. Maple Street was the kind of neighborhood where everyone claimed to know one another. Yet when questioned, residents gave accounts that contradicted each other in subtle but disturbing ways. One neighbor insisted that at 9 p.m. she saw Margaret Johnson in the yard, hanging sheets on the clothesline. Yet another swore the yard had been empty by then, the laundry left swaying in the wind. A different neighbor claimed he saw 2 figures leaving the Johnsons' house around midnight, but their features were obscured in the darkness. Still another stated that a black car had been parked nearby for hours. But when pressed, he could not recall the make, the license plate, or whether it had truly been there at all. These inconsistencies plagued the case from the very beginning. According to surviving police transcripts, officers grew increasingly suspicious of one particular household, the Millers, who lived directly across from the Johnsons. Several residents described the Millers as private, strange, and not originally from the area. Their curtains were always drawn, and late-night lights flickered unnaturally in their basement. Yet, curiously, official records show that the Millers left town abruptly just days after the Johnsons disappeared. They left no forwarding address. Their home was sold within weeks, and any trace of them in town history seemed to evaporate. Whether coincidence or something more sinister, the Millers' departure deepened the sense that something had been deliberately hidden. And as investigators probed deeper, they began uncovering fragments of evidence, fragments that pointed not only to the Johnsons' fate, but to forces operating far beyond their quiet suburban street.